Welcome to the last part, which is part 3 of the discussion video on Module 4, Accounting for Disbursements and Receipts of the Government. So, kanina ay nag-end tayo dito sa modes of disbursements. So, under the national government agencies, there are 6 modes of payment of transactions. They are by check, by cash, by non-cash availment authority, by TRA or the tax remittance advice, by advice to debit the account or the ADA, and other disbursements. So, isa-isahin natin itong modes of disbursements na ito. One is the under the national government agencies, ang very dominant is paggamit ng Modified Disbursement System checks. Ito yung mga cheque na diretso ay nababawasan ang funds ng treasury. Ito yung mga Modified Disbursement System checks. Normally, itong mga Modified Disbursement System checks na to ay ang validity nito ay 3 months lang. So, kung ikaw ay na-issuehan ng MDS checks, within 3 months ay dapat ma-encash or ma-deposit mo yan. Next is the commercial checks. Ito yung mga normal commercial checks na ini-issue ng mga bangko. Ang validity nito ay 6 months. So, kung na-issuehan ka niya, dapat within 6 months ay ma-encash or ma-deposit mo yan. Otherwise, yan ay magiging stale check. By cash, through the cash advance granted to the accountable officer. So, pwedeng cash advance yung designated accountable officers. Then, yung na-cash advance nila, ang gagamitin naman nila ngayon to pay for particular nature. So, itong mga accountable officers na to ay nililimit lang yan. Merong accountable officers for disbursements, accountable officers for yung collecting officers. So, may mga ganong classifications ang accountable officers. So, in this case, dahil modes of disbursement ito, accountable officers relating to disbursing o yung mga disbursing officers ang tinutukoy dito that are normally ito yung mga cashier. The non-cash availment authority, let's discuss this later, TRA and ADA. The first two modes, sabi dito, are discussed in more detail in succeeding topics. The other four are discussed below. So, i-discuss daw muna natin itong other four. Yung non-cash, TRA, ADA, and other disbursements. Etong NCAA or the Non-Cash Availment Authority, ang sinasabi lang dito, it is an authority granted by the DBM to a government agency to account for the cash equivalent of loan proceeds availed of through suppliers' credit or constructive cash. Under this mode of disbursement, payment for goods or services is directly made by the lending institutions to suppliers or creditors on behalf of the borrower agency. Okay, so may involvement ng may loan na involved on the transactions. So merong suppliers credit or constructive cash na tinatawag under the non-cash availment authority. Ang ibig sabihin kasi nitong non-cash availment authority ay inaalaw ka na kumuha ng mga goods on a supplier. Kumbaga parang pautang yon. Then, eventually, yun ay babayaran ng DBM. So, parang ganon ang sistema ng non-cash availment authority. So, hindi lahat ng agency ay binibigyan ng ganitong klaseng mode of disbursement ng DBM. Next is the payment using the tax remittance advice. Ito yung nire-recognize natin na tax, yung pagbabayad ng taxes na na-withheld ng government agency at eventually ay babayaran sa Bureau of Internal Revenue. This TRA refers to the document issued by the DBM that serves as the basis for the NGAS or the national government agencies to record the remittances of all taxes withheld to the BAR. The same document shall be the basis of the BIR and the BTR. Yung BTR is the Bureau of Treasury, to record the collections and deposits in the respective books of account. Okay, self-comprehensible naman yung statements. Under this mode of payment, the DBM reduces the NCA issued by the agency by an amount equivalent to the total tax to be remitted to the BIR by the agency concerned. The amount deducted by the DBM is based on the monthly request for the issuance of TRA submitted by said agency, duly supported by the statement of tax withheld. Kaya kung mapapansin mo, 'di ba yung NCA na ini-issue sa iyo ng DBM, pag inisyuan ka halimbawa ng 5 million, so itong 5 million na ito, gagamitin mo ngayon yan pangbayad sa mga suppliers mo dahil bumili ka ng mga items, for example. Yung binabayad mo sa suppliers mo, hindi lahat naman yun, hindi yung buong 5 million ay maibabayad mo sa supplier mo because nagwi-withheld ka nga ng tax. Yung wini-withheld mo ng tax na yun ay inire-recognize mo siya as a tax remittance advice. Then, on the part of the Bureau of Treasury, ang gagawin niya dyan ay dahil na-record niya before na yung na nabigyan ka niya ng NCA ng ganitong amount, then at the end of the period, magbibigay ka kay DBM ng statement of tax withheld. Ibig sabihin niyan, naka-indicate sa statement of tax withheld yung amounts na ibawas mo sa mga supplier na in effect ay, kung titingnan mo ay, in effect, yung naibawas mo sa mga supplier na yon ay hindi yun nabawas sa iyong cash dahil imbis na bayaran mo siya ng 1 million dahil may tax, ang babayaran mo na lang sa kanya ay, for example, 980,000. So, anong gagawin ni DBM sa records niya to be able to match itong mga tax remittance advice? So, once you request for the issuance of a TRA, tapos sinabit mo yon sa DBM, ang supporting document nun is a statement of tax withheld, ang gagawin lang ni DBM ay sa record niya, babawasan niya ang NCA na inaibigay niya sa'yo at i-allocate niya yun sa TRA na nire-request mong ma-issue sa kanya. So, ibig sabihin, within pa rin dun sa, halimbawa, dating 5 million, pero dahil sa request mo, dating 5 million ang NCA mo, pero dahil nakita na ang na-withheld mo na tax dyan ay nasa, for example, 1 million, o di babawasan niya lang yung NCA, gagawin niyang 9 million, then ilalagay niya lang, i-reallocate niya lang yon sa TRA. Kumbaga, that is a monitoring na nagwi-withheld ka ng tax for the BIR. So, yun ang gamit o use ng tax remittance advice. Basahin pa natin, with the use of the TRA, the use of MDS, the Modified Disbursement System, and the ADA, the Advice to Debit Account, by NGAS in the remittance of the BIR of all taxes withheld was discontinued, except for transactions of governments funded from the Working or Inverse Fund and Revolving Fund. So, anong sinasabi dito? Before kasi, nag-i-issue ka pa ng cheque when you are remitting taxes to the BIR. Pero because of the introduction of the tax remittance advice, hindi na tayo nag-i-issue ng cheque or advice to debit account para nagre-remit tayo kay BIR. So, yan lang sinasabi dyan. Except lang daw for transactions that are relating to working fund or revolving funds. Okay, next, the advice to debit account. This mode of payment refers to the direct remittance to the account of the creditor by the agency through the servicing bank or payments for accounts payable that have become due and demandable. Ano ang konsepto ng advice to debit account? Actually, the government agencies in the Philippines are on the transition. Ang goal is to eliminate the issuance of this Modified Disbursement System checks because of yung una yung masyadong maigsi na yung 3 month na pagiging stale ng cheque at saka yung the cost of issuing the check. So, etong advice to debit account, ang sinasabi lang dito ay kapag magbabayad si government agency sa kanyang supplier ay diretso na doon sa bank account na naka-register kay supplier. So, yun lang ang ibig sabihin niya. So, that would be that will facilitate yung speedy payment, disbursements of fund, mas mabilis ang pagbabayad ng government at mas efficient at mas cheaper kasi hindi ka nagagastos for the checkbooks when you are issuing the Modified Disbursement System checks. Ayan, using the ADA, the agency authorizes the GSB or the bank to debit its MDS account and to credit the accounts of the creditors named in the list that the DBM attached to the NCA. So merong isang listahan lang 'yan na naka-indicate doon sa list of itong mga due and demandable accounts payable, yung mga LDDAP na tinatawag, list of due and demandable accounts payable. So naka-indicate doon kung pangalan ng supplier, the account number, the bank account number, the amount. So naka-indicate doon para kapag binigay normally kay Land Bank, ay i-credit niya na lang lahat yon doon sa accounts na naka-indicate doon. Yung LDDAP na yon ay signed by the authorized signatories. Next, the other disbursements, the BTR directly makes the payment to the creditor or supplier. So, very rare naman itong transactions under the BTR. So, let's, when we, Fiscal Agency Service or FAS, okay. Kanina, we already discussed NCAA, TRA, ADA, and the other disbursements. Now, let's go with these two, yung by check and by cash. So, doon tayo sa mas prevalent, yung Modified Disbursement System. Ang sinasabi sa Modified Disbursement System ay lahat ng nasa GAA, nasa Public Works Act, and other supplemental appropriations ay kasama dito sa Modified Disbursement System na ito. So, merong general policy guidelines on the MDS. The DBM issues monthly the NCA directly to the central office and to provincial offices or operating units. Copy furnished the Treasury Accounts or Consolidation Division, the Bureau of Treasury, and the concerned government servicing bank. Okay. The NCAs issued by the DBM to the agency are journalized. So, di ba, on the previous modules, discuss na natin kung paano i-journalize itong NCA. The GSBs or the banks maintain separate accounts or ledgers for each agency and by funds using the NCA as basis to control withdrawals of the government agency. So, may copy rin ang government servicing bank no NCAs na meron ka. The agency is authorized to maintain sub-accounts with GSBs, reconcile the accounts monthly directly with the GSBs, okay? All MDS and commercial checks are governed by duly approved disbursement vouchers. These checks, except those issued to government employees, are crossed and for deposit only. So, itong mga ini-issuing cheque ng government, itong mga Modified Disbursement System and commercial checks, these are cross checks. Ibig sabihin, dapat i-deposit dun sa mismong account and not in cash. Kaya siya kinokross. Except lang kung ikaw ay employee ng government, pwede mo yang i-encash. Refunds of cash advances and the overpayments are remitted to the National Treasury by officers receiving the NCA directly from the DBM. Those receiving fund checks deposit such funds in the agency current account with the GSB. Okay. Just like the savings, yung mga refund ng mga cash advance, mga overpayment, ay diretso nire-remit sa National Treasury. Balance of the NCA at the end of the year automatically expires and is no longer valid for use in the ensuing year. So, ganito ang sistema under the Modified Disbursement System. Di ba, halimbawa, naka-receive ka ng 5 million for 2020, for example. So, yan ay nandoon sa MDS account mo sa bangko mo. Nandoon yung 5 million. So, paano mo babawasan yun? Pwede kang through issuance of the Modified Disbursement System checks or pwede yung auto-debit account. So, tuwing magbabayad ka, gano'n. So all throughout, nababawasan yun ng nababawasan. So, paano at the end of the year, merong natira halimbawa na 20,000 doon sa MDS account mo na yon. Ano ang mangyayari doon? It is automatically reverted back to the treasury. Automatic po yun. na nandoon sa system ng bangko na automatic kapag nakita ng system na may balance na 20,000, nire-remit niya kaagad yun sa account, sa mother account ng Bureau of Treasury. It is no longer valid for use in the ensuing year dahil na-remit na yun. Hindi mo na yun pwedeng gamitin pa on the succeeding year. Kaya siya modified itong disbursement system na to because it uh, it uh, it incorporates many controls on the disbursements of the funds in the government. So, imagine kung halimbawang malaking amount ang hindi mo na monitor, ang 1 million halimbawa, hindi ang na-monitor, it will be reverted back to the treasury. Sayang naman yung 1 million na pwede mo sanang gamitin on the priorities or programs and activities na in-specify mo during the budget preparation. And also, minomonitor din ng DBM yung budget utilization rate mo. So, imagine kung halimbawang 1 million ang natira at yun ay na-revert back to the treasury. That is, kung 5 million ang original budget mo, that is 1/5. So, ibig sabihin, 4/5 lang ang yung utilization ng yung budget. So tinitingnan nila yung percentages ng mga agencies on the utilization of their budget because meron yung bearing sa mga succeeding budgets na ibibigay sa iyo kasi kung all throughout the years ay na-observe nila na laging hindi mo nauubos yung budget mo, may possibility na bawasan nila yung budget mo for that particular year. Kaya nga in the government, it is very prevalent na inuubos yung budget for that particular year to be able to una because of yung funds na yun ay para talaga sa project or program na binadgetan, and pangalawa is to prevent yung performance kasi ng agency ay isang factor yon, and then may possibility kasi kapag laging merong mga nare-revert na funds ay may possibility na bumaba yung budget mo on the ensuing years. So yun ang isang controls in the NCA under the Modified Disbursement System. The agencies prepare monthly bank reconciliation statements using the prescribed forms for those receiving NCA or the NPAs. Okay? The BTR prepares the overall cash recon of the TOP MDS accounts. Okay? Prior years unpaid balance obligations are only being paid out of NCA request and release for the purpose in the ensuing year. Okay, there are cases, let us discuss this, yung last one, itong prior year. Meron kasing cases na yung obligations is for 2019 pero after 2020 hindi pa siya nababayaran. So, since wala sa budget ng 2020, ang obligations na yan, hindi mo yan pwedeng bayaran using the funds ng 2020. So, ano ang gagawin mo? You just have to request to the DBM to release the NCA for that particular unpaid obligations. So, in practice, inaalaw naman yan ng DBM as long as na-justify and as long as the period ay hindi ganun katagal from the date. Kumbaga kasi hindi maiiwasan na yung mga obligations sometimes on the previous year ay naka-carry over on the succeeding years. So I think that ends the discussion on MDS. Dun sa may cash naman, I think we already have discussed this, yung sa cash. Itong sa commercial checks, diniscuss ko na to kanina. Itong sa cash, yung sa accountable officers, yung mga nagka-cash advance that are normally the cashier or the head of the cash unit of an agency. The references for the discussion is the Training Handbook on Government Expenditures released by the Commission on Audit on specifically the Professional Development Office, the GAM issued by the COA, and the website coa.gov.ph. So more or less, kung mapapansin mo, the accounting for government and non-profit organizations, this involves analysis of how the fiscal policies of the government works, kung paano journalize yung mga transactions. Normally, doon lang nagre-revolve. So, more on theoretical ang accounting for government and non-profit organizations. More on journal entries, more on the analysis of kung paano ina-account yung mga disbursement. So, ganun siya on the government accounting. So, later on, we will have I will be requiring siguro yung appreciation dun sa mismong mga forms na ginagamit in government accounting para ma-internalize, ang tawag dito, ma-practice mo talaga kung papaano nafi-fill upan itong mga disbursement vouchers, obligation request, yung mga registry of allotments and obligations na binabanggit all throughout the discussion. So I think that ends the discussion on the last part of the discussion on Module 4, accounting for disbursements and receipts of the government. Thank you.